This is a Decision 2018 special report, the first congressional district debate.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the beautiful Gallagher Bluedorn Performing Arts Center here on the beautiful campus of the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls. And welcome to the first debate between the two candidates for 1st District Congress here in Eastern Iowa. The incumbent Republican is Congressman Rod Blum. Democratic State Representative Abby Finkenauer. They are on the stage now, ready for tonight's debate. I'm KWWL anchor Ron Steele.
And I am KWWL anchor Abby Turpin. Ron and I will be serving as the moderators of tonight's debate. We have compiled the list of questions for the candidates, and we will also be including some questions submitted by our KWWL viewers.
Tonight's debate will go as follows, though we'd like to keep it informal as possible. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to deliver an introductory statement, followed by our questioning. The debate will conclude later this hour, of course, and we'll leave enough time for up to 2 minutes from each candidate for closing remarks. Now, the order for the opening and closing statements and who will answer the first question, this has all been predetermined by coin tosses.
Each candidate will be given 60 seconds to answer a question on a certain topic. Both candidates will then have the opportunity to offer additional thoughts, a rebuttal for 30 seconds. Audience, we ask for you to save your applause for welcoming the candidates and then thanking them at the very end of tonight's debate. And so, let's begin. Please give a warm welcome to Congressman Rod Blum and Representative Abby Finkenauer.
Thank you very much. We begin now with an opening statement from State Representative Abby Finkenauer.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you so much to KWWL, our moderators here tonight, University of Northern Iowa, and all the folks that came out to see tonight, and also all those watching, and also Congressman Blum. Really looking forward to tonight. Again, I'm Abby Finkenauer, State Representative from Dubuque, and I'm running for Congress because this is personal. I grew up a daughter of a union pipe fitter welder. My mother actually just retired from the Dubuque Community School District. There were 4 of us in our family, and we were all first-generation college graduates. In fact, 2 of them actually graduated from University of Northern Iowa. I'm still paying off student loans, so not always easy. But at the end of the day, I grew up in a state and in a country where we were promised if you work hard, you can make it. Again, that is what we were told, and that is what we were promised. And unfortunately, right now, that promise is being broken in Washington, D.C. because of politics being played with policy. Look, I want to get there, actually get something done, fix health care, go and make sure we invest in our trade schools, our apprenticeship programs, actually stand up to an administration that wants to start a trade war on Twitter, and make sure we're investing in our infrastructure here in our state for rural Iowa as well. This is stuff we've got to get done and bring common sense and decency back to Washington, D.C., and I'm excited to be here tonight to chat about that.
Just on time. Thank you very much. State Representative Finkenauer. Congressman Rod Blum, your opening statement, please.
I, too, would like to thank KWWL for hosting this tonight, Abby and Ron, for both of you for being here tonight. I also like to thank the University of Northern Iowa, who recently was honored with being listed as the #2 public university in all of the Midwest of America. That is amazing. So congratulations to the University of Northern Iowa. I first and foremost am a husband to my wife, Karen, who's in the front row right there in the red. Secondly, I'm a father, a stepfather, an adoptive father. I'm also a grandfather, which has been a unique new experience in our lifetime. I was a high school basketball coach for many years. I was a columnist in the newspaper for many years, and also a business person. And I've been in the private sector and had businesses for over 30 years. I know what it's like to meet a payroll. I know what it's like to stay awake at night, not knowing where the money's going to come from to meet that payroll. I know what it's like to sign personal guarantees to the bank that if your business doesn't work, you're going to lose everything that you own. The reason I ran, two reasons. I think they're the right reasons. First of all is love of country. I love this country, and I also ran because of the American dream. I've lived the American dream, and I want to make sure that the American dream is there for your children and your grandchildren, because I think that hope for a better future is what separates America from all the other countries in the world. And how's that for timing?
Beautiful. Thank you very much. All right, Abby Turpin.
The person to answer the first question first tonight will be Congressman Blum. It is a question for both candidates. Research overwhelmingly shows that voting in Congress is as polarized as it has ever been, that the rates of Democrats and Republicans voting together on issues is at an all-time low. On what issues are you willing to reach out to the other party going forward? And please provide any examples when you have done so in the past. Congressman Blum, 60 seconds.
Yes, at our level in Congress, I agree with you, it's very polarizing. At my level in Congress, we get along very well together, Republicans and Democrats. And we were left alone at our level, we would get a lot of things done. I have my bills, my whistleblower bill that passed the House and Senate, was signed by the President, was co-sponsored by the ranking member, Elijah Cummings, from the Oversight Committee. I just did a bill as far as making sure that we protect pre-existing conditions. I'm the original co-sponsor on that bill with a Democrat, and also a bill that allows people that were nonviolent offenders from when they get out of prison to allow their records to be sealed again, and that is with a Democrat member of the House also. What bills would I be interested in bipartisanship? The big bills of the day. I had said consistently that any bill that has to do with health care, that has to do with Social Security and Medicare, immigration reform, tax cuts, those should all be bipartisan. It's the only way those bills will work is if they're bipartisan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Finkenauer, 60 seconds.
Well, thank you for the question. You know, this is part of what's wrong with D.C. right now. You know, folks can't get together on some of the issues that we always held true in our state. Very specifically, that farm bill was something that, you know, Harkin and Grassley could always get together and find some common ground and look out for Iowans. And unfortunately, we just saw that expire this last week or go home before they even voted on it. It's really disappointing to get to see some of that stuff happening in D.C. It's why I want to go there, stop playing politics with the policy, and do some of the stuff that we can work together on. I agree. Healthcare, we've got to talk about. We've got to work across the aisle on that, because right now, look, premiums are too dang high. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, no party, and it's happening all across the country. You know, some of the things in the State House that I'm really proud of, you know, you can talk to folks, you don't always agree on everything, but there are some common ground you can find, and, you know, something, human trafficking, going after the opioid epidemic. There's always more to do, but we've got to get something done.
Yeah. Thank you. Opportunity for a response.
Yes, is my mic is on, okay. Once again, I have worked in a bipartisan fashion very often. I started the bipartisan term limits caucus in Congress. Out of 435 members, sadly all we have is 37 members that are in the term limits caucus. One Democrat, Beto O'Rourke from Texas, and 36 Republicans. But that is bipartisan. I've also been involved on a Democrat issue and have been one of the leads on it, and that's gerrymandering. I stand against gerrymandering in the states. It's unfair whether it's Democrat or Republican. That's a Democrat issue, and I have led the charge in Washington against that.
And your response?
You know, I'm just thinking about more of those issues in D.C. that have been polarizing and politicized that, again, we've got to get together on. One of those is immigration reform that we've got to start looking at. I don't think Democrats or Republicans have gotten that right. It's something I want to go and actually deal with head on. I've been frustrated with what we've seen also on the state level as well. We've got to be better. This is not something you do because you want to go play politics. It's something you do because you care about your community and you want to go stand up for them. And that's what we need in D.C. right now.
Thank you very much. Representative Finkenauer, you get to answer this question first. Good news, earlier this week, the Taiwan soybean deal for sure. Then the president, a few hours later, announced that he's going to replace NAFTA with a new trade agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. But this deal at the present time does not do anything to lift any current tariffs. Why would you either support or disapprove of this new deal with Mexico and Canada?
Look, I'm concerned about trade in general right now and tariff situation happening in our country, but very specifically to Iowa. Look, this administration decided to start a trade war on Twitter. That's not how you get something done. We've got to come together here. You know, we're projected right now to lose in Iowa alone $2.2 billion. In just our egg industry alone, you've got $900 billion that our soybean farmers are going to, our pork producers are going to lose. Over $500 billion our soybean farmers are going to lose, and over $300 that our corn farmers are going to lose as well, our corn growers. It's disappointing. It's not how this should work. And quite frankly, my sister and brother-in-law are corn and soybean farmers, and I see that they're working their tails off right now, worried about their future every single day because of a trade war that this administration decided to start on Twitter.
Congressman?
Yes, I was with the Taiwanese ambassador when that deal for soybeans over $1 billion was announced. That is good. That's going to help the country. The NAFTA deal is a good deal. The new NAFTA deal, the USMCA, I believe it's called, is a good deal for farmers. It's a good deal for labor in this country. And if these were great deals, our president wouldn't have renegotiated it, because there's no political points to be scored doing this. But this was a promise he made in the campaign that we would not be taken advantage of. We would not be the piggy bank of the world anymore. And I've read, I wouldn't say I read all the trade agreements, I've read some trade agreements, and we are taken advantage of. We have signed a trade agreement with Australia. We've signed a trade agreement with South Korea. We have agreed with the European Union that we will not have a trade war as we renegotiate that agreement. China's the big one, and China right now is burning through their soybean stocks, and they are also paying a ransom to Brazil to import soybeans from Brazil. So this is costing China dearly. I believe the president, he broke Canada, he will break China, and our farmers will come out ahead for the next 20 years when these new trade deals are done.
Thank you very much. Chance for rebuttal, Representative?
Yeah, this whole idea that I keep hearing about be patient, it'll all be worth it in the long run. I'm out there talking to our farmers, and quite frankly, they are concerned. Again, sister and brother-in-law, corn and soybean farmers here who, they were getting ready for harvest just a few weeks ago and looking at, okay, what do they have to update equipment? What do they have to buy new? Then trying to go to banks, and you're having farmers right now, the bank's not sure what it's going to look like next year. This is hitting our state so hard. Again, $2.2 billion. Then the president and this administration decided to use our working families and farmers at poker chips they were willing to bet.
Was there one more rebuttal on that?
Yeah, opportunity.
Opportunity for a rebuttal. That's right. My fault. Thank you.
Counting, Ron.
Thank you.
Yes, right now is a tough time for farmers. Record corn, record soybean crops also are driving the price down. The farmers that I speak to, I'd say 95% of them say, yes, the prices are down right now. These are tough times right now, but we are willing to hang in there for the short term to have long-term prosperity. We are willing to hang in there with the president because we know he's a businessman. He's from the private sector, and if he knows how to do anything, it's how to negotiate good deals. So I believe we're going to see a 20-year period of prosperity for our farmers starting next year.
Thank you very much. Congressman Blum, you get the first answer to this question. And you mentioned the Farm Bill really being allowed to expire earlier this week with little or no fanfare with all the media attention on the Supreme Court nominee. So, Congressman, what do you see as the main thing holding up the Farm Bill besides the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program? What else is there?
Yes, we passed a Farm Bill, as you're well aware, Ron, in the House. Farm Bill, different Farm Bill was passed in the Senate. It's gone to conference. I was hopeful that by the end of September 30th, when the current Farm Bill expires, that the new one would come out of conference and we can vote on it. We will be voting on that, though, when we go back after the election. So that will be taken care of this year. We call it a Farm Bill. Probably 80 to 90% of the spending in that bill is really welfare spending, and really should be named a different type of a bill. That is the big hang-up in the House. We have a provision in there that I was supportive of, I still am supportive, and that's work requirements to receive food stamps. And what we put in there is if you're between the ages of 19 and 59 years old, physically and mentally able to work, and do not have a child under the age of 6 in your home, you ought to be working, or looking for work, or going to one of our fantastic community colleges getting the skills to work. We have more job openings than we have people looking for jobs for the first time in our country's history.
Thank you. Representative Finkenauer?
Look, this is something that I'm so disappointed to see Washington, D.C. not be able to get right and get together on. Again, Senator Harkin and Senator Grassley, this was always something when they didn't always agree on everything, could come together and think of Iowa, think of our farmers here in rural Iowa. And the fact is, politics was played with that farm bill in the House. And I support the Senate Farm Bill where they actually got together. It was a bipartisan agreement, and they have to just get it done. This is something, again, we've got to get serious about and take politics out of it and care about our families here in Iowa.
Congressman, rebuttal.
I couldn't agree more, Abby, about bipartisanship. However, I'm there. I know what it's like. And what we have is something called the resistance movement, the obstructionist movement. Nancy Pelosi, who I believe you know, went on an entire summer tour of the resistance movement. So we have one party who absolutely resists working with our party every step of the way. And we talk about bipartisanship. We agree. I'd love to see bipartisanship on every single bill. It's hard to get, though, when the other party's political strategy is resist, obstruct.
You get the final word on this particular subject.
Thank you. You know, this just illustrated my example perfectly. This is something we've got to get together on and put politics aside and get real policy done for Iowans. And instead of addressing the Farm Bill, Congressman Blum sat here and started to talk about politics. This is what's wrong with Washington, D.C., and it's desperately why we need some change.
Abby Turpin.
Next question is for both candidates, and I'm going to keep the question simple because the subject is not, it's already been mentioned tonight. What needs to be done on immigration? Representative Finkenauer, 60 seconds.
Thank you. We desperately need a comprehensive immigration reform package. It's something, again, I don't think Democrats or Republicans have gotten right, and it's another issue they've played politics with. A few things we've got to do in that is, yes, we have to have border security. We've got to have an earned pathway to citizenship for the folks who are already here, bringing them out of the shadows, keeping our communities safe. At the same time, we also have to have a pathway for our dreamers as well. And also, we need to be investing in E-Verify, making that mandatory, and also at the same time, making sure that that we are funding it so that our business works as it's supposed to.
Thank you. Congressman Blum, 60 seconds.
First of all, I'd like to say, as somebody who has started with nothing and lived the American dream, my heart goes out to people who are trying to immigrate to this country, to try to better themselves, to try to find jobs, to try to find work, to try to feed their family. My heart goes out to them. I have empathy for that. That being said, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I believe in the rule of law. And I don't believe for a second that if you don't like a law, you ignore it. I think you work to change it. So I believe in a comprehensive immigration reform package. I voted for the Goodlatte number 1. There was 2 Goodlatte bills for immigration reform. But here's the thing I hear from the American people. Under Ronald Reagan, we granted amnesty to millions of people here illegally with a promise that we were going to secure the border and build the wall. We got the amnesty. We never got the wall. And then under George Bush, I think it was 2003, a Secure the Border Act. We passed that, and there were things given to people that were here illegally, and we never got the border secured. We need to secure the border first and foremost, then we can talk about comprehensive immigration reform.
Response?
Look, I absolutely, again, want to reiterate the need to stop playing politics with this and have comprehensive immigration reform that, again, addresses border security, make sure that we have a pathway for our dreamers and an earned pathway to citizenship for the folks who are already here so that we have safer communities. That's what we've got to do. Again, we can get it done. I saw the Senate do it in 2014. It just never got brought up in the House.
Response?
I'd also like to mention when it comes to immigration that we passed quite a few good bills in the House that did not make it through the Senate. I voted for Sarah's law. I voted for Kate's law. I voted for the end of federal funding for any sanctuary cities. I believe my opponent voted against that type of bill in the Iowa State House, and I voted for the Goodlatte bill. I am 1,000% for legal immigration, but you have to do it the right way.
Thank you. If I could actually offer a follow-up question here, because immigration is so top of mind to so many voters. Representative Finkenauer, you've mentioned we need border security a couple of times. Can you give me specifics as to what you would actually propose in Congress?
Yeah, we need to start looking at technology and investing in manpower. That's what we have to do. It's something we do need to take seriously, and I'm willing to get there and actually talk to folks who know what they're doing and make sure that we do this the right way.
A response.
Yeah, I've had numerous meetings with the border agents and ICE from the San Antonio, Texas area where the Rio Grande is. Trust me, we are being played for fools, our country is, and they're being coached on what to say when they cross the border. That's the reason we have to do DNA tests, because 80 to 90% of the children that accompany them are not their children. So we need to build a barrier. I don't know if it's a wall in all areas, but we need a barrier, and it needs to be patrolled both with people and with technology, and get serious about controlling our border.
Thank you both. My next question is about taxes. The Tax Cut and Jobs Act, passed and signed into law in December of last year, was the biggest tax overhaul since the Tax Reform Act of 1986. It has cut taxes by hundreds of millions of dollars. First, Congressman Blum, there is a fear the GOP could cut funds from programs like Medicare, Medicaid, education, or Social Security to offset the projected $1.5 trillion in deficits. Since you did back the tax cuts, are you going to support cutting funds to Medicare, Medicaid, education, or Social Security to cover that deficit? 60 seconds.
One of the biggest political lies in the last 2 years is that one right there. I stood on the House floor, and never before have I used charts. But I took 2 charts with me in the House floor and gave a speech about this. And I showed the Reagan tax cut of 1986, and the revenues to the government increased and doubled in the next 10 years because we have more taxpayers and more people were making more money. Then I replaced that chart with a chart of Kennedy's tax cuts in 1964, the year after he was assassinated, and the same thing happened. Revenues to the federal government doubled in the next 10 years, both after the Reagan tax cut and after the Kennedy tax cut. So this is a myth that cutting taxes and letting people keep more of their own hard-earned money is costing the government anything. First of all, it's the people's money. It's not the government's money. And secondly, if you want to grow government, give tax cuts. We have all-time record revenues right now. We have all-time record revenues in the federal government because of these, in part because of these tax cuts.
Thank you. Representative Finkenauer, you say that you are fighting for working class families, and taxes on working class families have been reduced thanks to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. So why don't you support this?
Look, this is a bill that added $1.9 trillion to our deficit. Again, putting programs like Social Security and Medicare at risk. That's not how this is supposed to work. When you've got 83% of that $1.9 trillion going to your top 1% and big corporations. It's not looking out for working families when, again, this was drafted for those tax cuts for working families to expire. The ones for the big corporations, those are permanent. So when you look at who this was really for, you know by looking at the details. Look, I ran into somebody that I went to grade school with the other day. He's a union iron worker, young guy, 29, he's got a young family, and he saw me and he said, hey, you're doing that government stuff, right? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, look at that tax plan. They're giving Ferraris to those at the top, and I'm barely able to pay for my dinner here. And I said, Robbie, that's why I'm running for Congress.
Thank you. An opportunity to respond.
The average family of 4 in my district, according to the Congressional Budget Office, will save $2,464 per year, every year, with these tax cuts. That's $25,000 over 10 years. I did lead the charge when the bill was in conference to have the corporate tax cuts expire and make the individual tax cuts permanent. And we just signed a bill in the House, at least, it hasn't been through the Senate yet, that makes the individual tax cuts permanent. The tax cuts are working. We have more people working than ever. Wages are up. Take-home pay is up.
Thank you. Opportunity to respond.
Yeah, I saw that bill that they just decided to pass, and I'll tell you this. Working families were an afterthought. That's not how this was supposed to be done. We should be looking at tax reform that does help working families. What we saw pass out of that House and that Senate back in December, again, 83% of it going to the top 1% in corporations. That tells you everything you need to know. And again, we've got to go to D.C. to actually make sure we bring the voices of folks here in this district to have a seat at the table.
It's time. Thank you both.
My next question centers around the word ethics. Now, political ads and others have questioned the ethics of both of you in this campaign, so tonight I'd like to give both of you the opportunity to clear the air. Representative Finkenauer, you're up first to answer this. Some people say you committed an ethics violation, though both of you have said really that this is not a big deal, that it doesn't matter, but to Iowans I think it does. You have said that it was an oversight that you failed to note a change of employment when you took a job as the Iowa director of Make It Work. Now, can you see where some people might view this nonprofit as a special interest organization, perhaps trying to gain influence within the Iowa legislature through a state representative like you, who at the time was the Iowa director? So what happened? Was it an oversight? Did you not understand the rules, or were you just hoping nobody was paying attention?
Well, thanks for bringing it up. Look, I had a public job that I actually reported in the newspaper when we got it, and I'm proud of that job. It was for a nonprofit where we fought for equal pay, paid family leave, affordable child care, working family issues. And I got to tell you, the second that I found there was a new way or a new requirement to be able to report that employment to the Iowa House, I did so. What we're dealing with Congressman Blum is very different here. He had a company that he did not disclose, whose whole purpose of the company was to hide FDA violations of other companies. On top of it, he's got an open ethics investigation right now against him in that U.S. House, headed up by a Republican chairwoman. Also, I assume, looking into the fact that his chief of staff, paid for by us, the taxpayers, made a fake testimonial saying he worked for another one of Congressman Blum's companies, which, by the way, he never did, in support of this other company. I'm sorry, that is wrong. That is not how Washington should work.
Thank you. I'm not sure you answered my question, but you took my you took my next question, which goes to Congressman Blum, unless you would like to respond to that right now and take your 30 seconds. Otherwise, I'll ask you a question about your ethics. Okay? I'm going to ask my question. Okay, so Tin Moon, she mentioned the company, not by name, but your role as a director at the time. You did apologize, if I remember correctly, but the Ethics Committee took the unusual, I think, effort of making an announcement back on September 4th that they were extending this investigation, although we won't have the results until after the election days. So what happened here? And why have you had any contact with the Ethics Committee at all, the Committee of Ethics of the U.S. House of Representatives? What have you told them? If not, I would assume you want to tell them something. What will you tell them?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked as well, Ron. This is a $1,000 company. Started with a $700 investment from myself and $300 from the other partner in the company. That has resulted in $2 million in attack ads. So that's kind of interesting. So it's a $700 company in 2016 that I put $700 into, and I forgot to list on my disclosure report that I was on the board of directors of a $700 company. Okay, I apologized. I self-reported as soon as I found out about it, and I asked them, and it's written. The Office of Congressional Ethics has written. You can check this. 30 to 50% of congressional members make mistakes when they file these reports. So I made a mistake. I self-reported. I've cooperated with them. The Tin Moon is a reputation management company. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry in the United States. There's nothing nefarious about it. And lots of people use reputation management to either bring their name up or take their name lower in search engine results. I don't run any of these companies.
Thank you.
I have nothing to do with any of them.
Your chance for a rebuttal here.
Yes, thank you. Congressman, I have a question for you. You had your congressional chief of staff, again, paid for by taxpayer dollars, make a fake testimonial saying he worked for one of your other companies in support of this other company who hides FDA violations. And my question for you is, if you didn't know about the company and you didn't tell your congressional chief of staff, again, paid for by us, to make those testimonials, who did?
Congressman, you have a chance to rebut.
I work probably 70 to 80 hours a week being a congressional representative for the 1st District. I do not have time to run the companies that I'm involved in, and I own a few companies. I'm lucky if I can talk to the CEO of Tin Moon or Digital Canal, or whoever it may be, once every couple of weeks to say hello. So whatever decisions he makes were not decisions I was involved. It wasn't my chief of staff, it was my district director at the time. He's personal friends with the CEO of the company, and he probably asked him out of friendship if he record something, and he didn't do it on company time. And it's rich that somebody who's never worked a day in the private sector suddenly knows so much.
Excuse me, thank you.
Rich.
No,
Rich.
Audience, please, you were on your best behavior until just a moment ago, so let's stay on your best behavior. Abby.
Next question. School and mass shootings have ignited the debate on gun control over the past years. Now, while there is disagreement on gun control generally, there is widespread agreement on specific proposals. For example, a 2017 Gallup poll found that 96% of Americans support background checks on all gun purchases, 75% support a 30-day waiting period, and 70% support having privately owned guns registered with police. And first to go is going to be Congressman Blum. Just on Monday of this week, the one-year anniversary of the Las Vegas massacre, President Trump said that a ban on bump stocks is coming, and also said his administration is working with Congress, quote, on both sides, on, quote, a lot of different things in regards to gun legislation. Could you elaborate and also explain your stance on gun control?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the president has in mind or what legislation is coming, so I can't comment on that. But consistently, I have said, especially in response to the school shooting, I don't believe taking guns away from law-abiding citizens is the answer. That's a political narrative. It's a political answer. If we really want to protect the kids in school, I say let's give them the same protection that I as a member of Congress get. Okay? And I never worry about a gun being in one of our congressional office buildings in Washington, D.C. The reason is we have a couple armed guards standing at the entrance with a magnometer that everyone has to go through. Now, why can't we have a magnometer and a couple of armed guards at every school in this district? I recently, over the last 4 years, have saved over $400,000 out of my office budget, our congressional funds. They won't let me do this, but with that $400,000, we could buy a magnometer for every school, particularly every high school in my district, and then 20 counties I represent.
Thank you. Representative Finkenauer, where do you stand on gun control, and why should voters believe that if elected, you would be able to actually make progress on the issue?
Well, thank you. Look, I also grew up a daughter of a pheasant hunter, and I know, being a sportsman is a big part of our culture here in Iowa, and I stand and I, respect and defend the Second Amendment, and so what we need to do, because our sportsmen deserve a right to be able to go, pheasant hunting, deer hunting, duck hunting, but at the same time the next morning, be able to send their kids to school and not be worried about them not coming home or go to a country concert or a baseball game. Where we have to start is where we agree. And again, 96% of gun owners believe in universal background checks. This is something we've got to get done. And the fact that we can't get something done in Washington where 96% of folks agree that we need to get it done shows just how broken it is right now. We need to start there and we need to get serious.
Thank you. Opportunity for a response, or can I pose a follow-up question?
You're running it, whatever you like.
Thank you. Hey, your choice. All right. The follow-up for you both, and you'll each have 30 seconds on this. Mass shootings have also, of course, ignited the debate on mental health. So what would you do in Congress to reform the system? 30 seconds.
Yes, that is a great point. And I think right now, if you're not mentally healthy or you're been deemed mentally unstable by a judge, adjudicated in a court, you can't own a handgun or a gun today. So this points out something. We've got tons of laws to protect people that are buying the guns and the rest of society. We just don't enforce a lot of them. And I think the first thing we need to do is make sure that they're enforced. In the terrible school shooting in Florida, the FBI and the school officials and police were warned, I think, 5, 6, 7, 8 times and just ignored the warnings and didn't talk to each other.
Thank you.
Well, first let's make sure we're not creating a stigma here with folks with mental health. vast majority of folks with mental health issues are not violent. So we need to recognize that. Secondly, you are right. It is a huge issue in our state and in our country. In Iowa, we actually have the lowest number of mental health beds per person, or proportionally, in our state. That's not how this should work. I saw our MHIs being closed on that state level. It's something that, again, shouldn't be being done, when we should be investing instead of just talking about it.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Next question. I'd like to ask about the Affordable Care Act. And Representative Finkenauer, you get to answer this first. Do you support Obamacare in its current form? What changes, if any, would you like to be made in Washington if you're elected to Congress?
Well, thank you. This is something that is at top of mind for folks all across this district. Within the first couple of months of getting out there talking to folks, I met a woman who had oxygen. And she told me that if that AHCA bill would have passed the Senate that Congressman Blum voted for, that her doctor told her that she wasn't going to be able to afford her oxygen all day and all night long, and looked at me and said, well, you don't get to pick to breathe or when you breathe. Why should I have to? And I knew in that moment we had to get serious and get something done that we can work across the aisle on. And I believe that's adding a public option to the ACA, fixing it, and making sure that we allow folks up to the age of 65 to buy into Medicare, lowering those insurance premiums that folks all across this district are seeing are way too high, and make sure, again, that we also allow Medicare to negotiate directly with drug companies as well to lower those prices. We got to get serious about health care, and we got to get something done.
Congressman?
The Affordable Care Act was promised to us that the average family would save $2,500 a year on their health insurance premiums. The opposite occurred. It cost $2,500 a year on insurance premiums. We were told if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. That wasn't the case. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. That wasn't the case. I don't think overregulation of the healthcare industry is the answer. I don't think the government takeover of the healthcare industry is the answer. We have let's keep this. We have government and we have the private sector. And I know of no better way to keep our quality high. We have the best healthcare in the world here, quality-wise. And we need to drive the price down. And the best way to do that is through the private sector. So government needs to help people who need help. Our elderly, Social Security, Medicare recipients, our veterans, special need folks, and then we need to help them with their premium purchases. But on the other side of the coin, unleash the private sector to do their thing. The miracle of the free marketplace will drive costs down. We overregulate it to death today.
Thank you. Rebuttal. State Representative?
Again, we've got to fix the ACA. The way that you actually drive down prices here is to allow folks up to the age of 65 to buy into Medicare, adding competition into that marketplace to drive down premiums. We've got to get serious here. And again, this is something I hear from Democrats, Republicans, folks in no party. I mean, it does not matter. It is at top of mind here. And what they are concerned about are some of the votes we have seen in Washington, D.C., which would have allowed insurance companies to charge folks with pre-existing conditions higher premiums. That's not how this should work, and that's not affordable.
Thank you. Congressman, last word.
I only have 30 seconds, so some of the ideas to unleash the private sector is, why can't we buy health insurance across state lines? Why can't we buy health insurance online? Why were there 3 or 4 health insurance plans in Iowa? There's probably 1 or 2 that we can buy from. We should have the option of hundreds of health care plans. Drugs, this is the Democrat idea. I think it's Hillary Clinton's idea. Let's look at re-importing drugs from other countries where you can buy them for a dime on a dollar in Canada or Mexico, and let's negotiate for Medicare and Medicaid drug prices just like we do in the Veterans Administration.
Thank you.
We now want to turn to some viewer questions that were submitted within the past week. And this is a question from a retired Army veteran. Our military has been at war now for close to 2 decades. Every day we hear about cuts to VA programs, cuts in mental health programs. How will you expand and ensure timely care for veterans? Congressman Blum, it's your question first. 60
yes,
seconds.
We have a president, President Trump, who cares deeply about our military and deeply about our veterans. One of the bills that I authored and passed and was signed into law was the whistleblower bill. And whistleblowers are needed the absolute most in the Veterans Administration because of some of the long wait lines that were lied about, some of the horrible conditions in VA hospitals that were lied about, and people came forward and they were punished by management. My bill would protect them. I just voted for the last two defense bills, which gave the largest increase in defense spending. We're over $700 billion a year. We are rebuilding our military and also taking a better care of our veterans. And I voted for and we passed a bill that said if somebody in the Veterans Administration isn't doing the job, you're fired. And before, it was almost impossible to get rid of anybody in the VA administration system. They just reassigned them to other places. So this will give increased accountability. The VA Choice Act is a good program, and I think already we are seeing things improve in our Veterans Administration.
Time. Thank you. Your response.
Well, thank you for this question. It's incredibly important. In fact, we just had a roundtable a couple of weeks ago here in Black Hawk County where we talked to veterans across this district about their concerns, and they are concerned about the VA right now and the underfunding. And, you know, I actually had a Congressman Bolton here who is a Marine veteran, and he was able to talk to them as well. When they brought up the funding, they asked him, what's the problem right now? And he said, quite frankly, after that tax bill that passed with $1.9 trillion being added to our deficit, they're having trouble finding the money. And that's not how this should work. We should be valuing our veterans in those programs and not passing irresponsible bills that are taking away those resources to be able to support the folks who fought for our country.
Thank you. A response?
I would just like to quickly say I've only met one veteran in my 20-county district that has been unhappy with the VA hospital in Iowa City. So a shout out to the VA hospital in Iowa City. They're doing a fantastic job. The VA home in Marshalltown, which is the only VA home in the state, is in my district. I have visited there numerous times, and the veterans I talk to are smiling and happy. So in my district here in eastern Iowa, we're doing a great job of taking care of veterans. I've consistently said there's three groups of people we need to help or take care of: senior citizens, veterans, and special need folks. And so veterans is on that list. We should always take care of our veterans.
Thank you. Representative Finkenauer.
Again, we've got to look for the funding for the programs that folks need. One of the number one things that I heard as well during that roundtable were the folks that were worried about mental health and making sure there was enough money around PTSD programs as well. You know, we send our folks off to war. We better make sure that we can help them when they come back home. They fought for us. It is a value that we need to hold true, and we better be respecting them and respecting our veterans and making sure that we have those funds available.
Thank you very much. We apparently are on the eve of one of the most important Senate votes in history coming up tomorrow. This is a viewer question for both of you. Representative Finkenauer, you will answer it first. In your opinion, should Judge Brett Kavanaugh be confirmed to the United States Supreme Court? Why or why not?
Look, the appointment to the U.S. Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. These are folks that are charged with upholding our Constitution. And you must have the utmost character to sit on that court. I am not alone here when I say the character of Judge Kavanaugh has come into question sincerely the last few weeks and beyond. You know, I am very concerned about what I saw coming out of that Judiciary Committee just a week or so ago. They should have done an FBI investigation to begin with instead of a pulled back version where they didn't even talk to Dr. Blasey Ford, which, by the way, I believe. And anyone who watches that testimony, I find you hard-pressed to tell me different. We need to believe survivors, and the fact is I have very serious concerns about Judge Kavanaugh, and when this is a lifetime appointment, we better take those concerns seriously and take our time with it.
Congressman, crowd, please. 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 You were doing so well. You really were. Congressman, your turn.
First of all, I agree with my opponent that purported assault victims should be believed. They should have their day in court. It should be investigated. I'm saddened for the country that Supreme Court appointments have become so politicized. The Supreme Court is there to interpret the Constitution, not to make the laws. I also feel bad for Dr. Ford, who wanted to keep her letter confidential, and it was leaked by someone in Dianne Feinstein's office to the public. I also feel bad for Judge Kavanaugh because he has been accused and his reputation's probably been ruined and his family's on something that has not been substantiated. And in our country, there's a burden that you are innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. And there has been no corroboration of those facts.
Please, quiet, please. Quiet, please.
So there's been no corroboration of what she said.
Time.
They were doing so well.
You were doing so well, right? Okay.
You do have an opportunity to respond if you'd like.
Well, thank you. Again, we've got to take these things seriously. This is a lifetime appointment here, and I've been very disappointed with the lack of the FBI investigation and the limited scope. They did not take their time with this when they should. This is not how it should have been done, playing out in the Senate Judiciary Committee. Again, as soon as these came forward, there should have been an investigation. I stand by that, and I have serious concerns about Judge Kavanaugh.
Congressman?
I was trying to say there was no evidence and there was no corroboration. So what we have is a he said, she said. And without corroboration and evidence, you're innocent in this country until proven guilty. And I think if it's otherwise, we're in a scary place as a country, that any Supreme Court nomination or any nomination to serve in the administration could be derailed just because someone steps forward and accuses you of doing something when you're in high school. That's not a good place to be in if that becomes the standard.
Thank you.
Now to a question on education. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos favors spending public school funds to provide vouchers for students to attend private schools. What is your stance on this issue? Congressman Blum, you're first.
Yes, first of all, I think our public school system in eastern Iowa, I'll speak for my district, is excellent. I went through the public school system. All my sons and daughters went through the public school system. I coached in the public school system. So I think we're blessed in eastern Iowa with great public schools. And they, as I often tell the teachers and the principals when I meet with them, you see all of society's problems. And parenting anymore isn't what it used to be. And they have to put up with that. The public school teachers do. So their job is a very tough one. I also, though, believe in competition. And I know other school districts, Malcolm, who we took into our family, a young African-American man from the south side of Chicago, came to Iowa and could not read in the 6th grade from the inner city of Chicago. So in places like the inner city of Chicago, something needs to get done. Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing tomorrow you did today and expect different results.
Time. Thank you. Your response.
Well, thank you for bringing Secretary DeVos up. I had a very big concern when she was appointed in the first place because of the fact that she had no public school or any experience in that realm. And to be frank with you, this is one of the things that in the State House I saw underfunded year after year, not keeping up with cost of inflation. Our per pupil funding have gone down and down. We've fallen in our rankings in terms of funding per student, and that's not how this should work. We have excellence in education on our quarter. It's something that we value here in Iowa, and we better get serious about backing it. And we need to be supporting our public schools, not figuring out ways to take more money away from them.
Thank you. And for timing's sake, let's go ahead and move on to the next viewer question.
The cost of running a race is extraordinary, even for a 2-year term for the House of Representatives. You need millions and millions of dollars to even have a chance to make it. Congressman Blum, I believe you answered this first, according to my record here. Where is your money coming from this time around, and will you use any of your own money in this campaign?
The majority of my money, Ron, comes from within the district. My top 3 fundraising cities, I don't know if this is the correct order, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, Cedar Falls, and Dubuque. I believe 66%, 70% of my money comes from within the 1st District of Iowa. My opponent, her top 3 fundraising cities are Hollywood, New York City, and Boston. I'm proud that most of my money comes from within this district because the people contributing to me live here, they work here, they go to school here, they worship here, and I'm very proud of the fact that that's my top contributors. All these attack ads you see every day, I'm being outspent 10 to 1. Yeah, that money comes from the East Coast and the West Coast, and they're trying to buy a congressional seat in Iowa. And I don't think they understand Iowa. I don't think they understand Iowans. And I don't think you can come, they call us flyover country every other day of the year. And the money's flying in here to my opponent's campaign from the East and West Coast, and she can address that now.
Your turn.
Thank you for bringing campaign finance reform up. It's something we've got to deal with. And the fact is, I want to tell you a story of the first couple of months of me being in this campaign. I was out there, and we've got 20 counties. It's a lot to cover. I was out there driving around that day talking to folks, and at the end of the night, it was about 10 o'clock at night. I stopped to fill up with gas, and I'm looking at the gas pump, and I'm seeing that number go up and thinking, how in the world are you going to afford to be able to do this? And for the first time, it hit me. Why somebody who can write themselves $500,000 personal checks to their campaign account runs for Congress, and why folks who are still paying off student loans don't. And I gotta be honest with you, it would have been real easy to walk away at that moment. But then I started thinking about it, and the fact that we need folks who are paying off student loans in Washington, D.C. We need folks who are looking out for my friends, family, and neighbors. I have put together a strong grassroots campaign that I am proud of. Our average donation is $20. And Congressman Blum won't tell you this, but we actually have more individual donors within the state of Iowa than Congressman Blum.
I would like to follow up just one real quick question about the race itself. Is this just a race between two people who have different philosophies and different parties that apparently aren't willing to work together, or is this a referendum on the first 2 years of President Donald Trump? Representative Finkenauer?
You know, thanks for bringing that up. I talked to a lot of folks who voted for President Trump, and, he walked around talking about investing in infrastructure, fixing health care. The problem is he just hasn't done any of it, and that's the problem here. When I'm out there talking to folks, they are ready for change. They're not happy with the instability and chaos that they're seeing in Washington, D.C., and we've got to do better. It's why I decided to do this, and I'm excited to go there and actually make sure Iowans are heard.
Thank you, Time.
Congressman?
It's somewhat, of course, a referendum on the president. I support President Trump. I disagree with my opponent saying he hasn't done anything. I think in spite of a resistance movement, what he's accomplished has been nothing short of phenomenal. ISIS is on the run. We've reclaimed 70% of the territory in the Middle East. Our economy is booming along at two times the growth rate as former President Obama. He's reduced regulations on business, reduced the tax rates on individuals and businesses. We have a start to a border wall, start to the funding. He's accomplished, I think, a tremendous number of things in a short amount of time.
Thank you. And very quickly, one more question. This is my own, not a viewer question. This will be our final question of the evening. For both candidates, looking back on your political career, is there any piece of legislation you supported or did not support that you now regret? Congressman Blum, 30 seconds.
I love that question, because I knew for a fact in the last 18 months, if I voted for a repeal and replace of Obamacare, our HCA Act, which was a pretty darn good act, and if I voted for the tax cuts, I know I'd take a lot of heat for it. I know there'd be millions of dollars of attack ads coming in here against me, but I did something that's rare in Washington, D.C., and that's had political courage, because I believed in those bills. They're not perfect, but they're better than where we're at today. I voted for those bills, and sure enough, millions of dollars of attack ads have been run against me for having political courage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Finkenauer.
Thank you. When I look back at my 4 years in the State House, I think about what I'm most proud of. And I'll be honest with you, it was tough. We were in the minority the first couple of years, and then that second couple of years, we lost the Senate. So a lot of that bad stuff that was going after working families started to get passed, including the gutting of collective bargaining, going after workers' compensation. Folks who are working 40 hours a week and get hurt on the job, they just made it harder for them to get the compensation they deserve. And I remember standing there thinking a few times during those votes, this isn't how we treat people.
Thank you. And we are now nearing the end of the hour, and each candidate will now be given 2 minutes for their closing remarks. And based on a coin toss, the first to go will be Representative Finkenauer.
Thank you so much. I'm glad, because I want to continue that story. This was actually the moment that I knew I was going to run for Congress, was when I was standing on that floor of the State House, and I saw after 2 days of fighting back against the gutting of collective bargaining, where it was going after our teachers, our corrections officers, our bus drivers. And I remember looking up into the gallery where a lot of them were sitting, and they had tears in their eyes, and so did I. And I remember thinking, this is not how we treat people in my state or in my country. And I was going to do whatever I could to get it back. And so that's why I decided to do this, because it was so personal. And then I started talking to folks across this district, and I realized it was so personal for so many reasons for folks across this district as well, including the woman who was worried about being able to afford her oxygen all 24 hours, including to the man that I met when I was door knocking who had to pay $10K a month for his cancer medication and relying on grants to do it, including folks like my sister and brother-in-law who are corn and soybean farmers, who are worried about their future every day because of a trade war started on Twitter. It's not how this is supposed to work. It's not how Washington's supposed to work. And Congressman Blum, I really, really appreciate the chance to chat tonight because it's clear that, you went to Washington to change Washington. I respect that. But the fact is, with the votes we have seen from Congressman Blum, Washington has changed him. We deserve better. That's why I would love your support. And I'm going to work my tail off to bring common sense, decency, and respect back to Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please.
We really need to get to these.
We need your respect, please. Congressman Blum, 2 minutes.
First of all, I'd like to thank the voters in the 1st District for sending me to Washington, D.C. to represent you all. It's a heck of an honor. I get goosebumps every time I walk up the marble stairs that Abraham Lincoln walked up. And I think if you don't have that tingle up your spine when you do, you should get out of this business. I'm very proud that I'm not a career politician. In fact, I stand against career politicians. I'm for term limits. But I would like to address one thing she said about Washington changing me. You should ask Paul Ryan, Speaker Ryan. You should ask Leader Kevin McCarthy. You should ask former Speaker John Boehner if Washington, D.C. has changed me, because it hasn't. And I vote against my own party. My opponents voted with the Republican Party in Des Moines 97% of the time. I have voted against my own party, starting with my very first vote against then-sitting Speaker John Boehner. I'm the guy that is still fighting in Washington, D.C. for term limits. I started the Term Limits Caucus, bipartisan. I'm the guy that wants to eliminate the Congressional Pension Program. I'm the guy that wants to cut our congressional pay by 5% every year that the budget's not balanced. I'm the guy that wants to end the Sexual Harassment Slush Fund, make public the names of who the money was paid out on behalf of. I'm the guy that wants to have a permanent ban on lobbying, lifetime ban on lobbying. I'm that guy. Washington has not changed me. And you can ask my leadership. They will tell you that, yes, we have to listen and put up with Blum sometimes. But they're not going to change me. I'm 63 years old. I went there for the right reasons, not for a career, not to be a career politician. I went there because I know what I believe in. I know what my true north is, and I don't lick my finger and stick it in the political winds to figure out how to vote. If you send me back to Washington, I think we need to focus on immigration reform. We need to focus on health care reform. We need to keep this economy going. We need to focus on welfare reform. And we need to reform Congress with some of those bills of mine that I just mentioned. And thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you. Quiet. Thank you. Thank you, audience. Hang on. Hang on. I know you're raring to go. I'm going to give you a chance here in just a second. Okay. So we have reached the end of our 60-minute debate, our hour debate. Thank you very much to Congressman Rod Blum, to State Representative Abby Finkenauer for their participation in this joint presentation between KWWL Television and the great University of Northern Iowa here in Cedar Falls. From the Gallagher Bluedorn Performing Arts Center, thank you for watching. Have a great campaign. And good night, everyone.